Hi, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of my chat with Ken Reed. Ken is the president of North Sails. He's a multi-time world champion, as you all know, and one of the most respected names in our sport. In the second part of my conversation with Ken, he talks about racing in the America's Cup, which includes some more great Dennis Conner stories. He gave me some great advice on preparing a race boat and what to prioritize. And he also talked about his revolutionary thoughts on how to make regattas more fun, more efficient, and family friendly, and what he's doing to advance that agenda with Ray Wolf and the New York Yacht Club. So here we go. We're going to pick up the conversation as we were talking about the subject of his favorite boats. Here we go. I know you've sailed on some wonderful boats, Stars and Stripes, the Volvo Ocean Race, and Comanche as well. Was the one that you loved driving, and were they all very, very different, or were the principles all the same?
I think the principles for the most are the same. How they react and how they respond and how you have to kind of work at it to make them go top speeds are very different. You know, Comanche, there's nothing like that boat. A windy reach or downwind, or we had some of the best helmspeople in the world on that boat. And I remember it's blowing hard. It was actually the day that we broke the 24-hour speed record, and we're just ripping across the North Atlantic Ocean heading for England, and it's blowing, 25, 28, it's boat speed weather. We got the right sails up, everything's perfect. And the driver, all of a sudden the boat's going faster. The more we heel, the boat's going faster and faster. But to the point of, we're sailing along at kind of 30 degrees of heel, blowing 30 degrees of heel, going about 30, so it feels pretty edgy. He's got 2 fingers on the wheel back there. Matter of fact, I think he smoked cigarettes, and he was like, smoking a cigarette and 2 fingers on the wheel. Boat's all fetched up at about 35 degrees, water everywhere, and there's just nothing like it. When the TP52 Transpac, it was called the Transpac 52 class back in about 2000, when 4 or 5 of them got built on the West Coast, and then it kind of started to fizzle out. And I got 3 owners to build brand new far boats. It was kind of the modern version of where we are today with the TP52 class. That boat, that kind of second generation TP52, that really paved the way for the modern TP52 class. I'm very proud of that. First of all, I'm very proud of starting to figure out that the box rule had some real legs that could, anybody who sails a TP52, no matter whether it's the very best or just kind of an okay one, gets off the boat going, holy crap, is that a nice boat to sail. It's just an amazing boat to sail. And then the third one, there's nothing like an Etchells going upwind. It's just a freight train. And you get dialed in, and the 3 of you are kind of leaning your butts over the side. I have some amazing photos of the good old days in sailing Etchells, and I loved my time in the Etchells. And the only reason I still don't sail Etchells is because big boats kind of took my time away. But those 3 boats, and you notice I keep the J24 off. God bless Rod Johnstone, but any boat that you have to sail, any keel boat you got to sail dead flat with lee helm, it is not going to make the list. And that's how you had to sail those boats, dead flat with lee helm.
I had Jeff Johnston on the podcast, just published it this week, and he was talking about the first J24 and being made in the garage. I didn't know that. I do want to talk about America's Cup because it's fantastic what you did there. So you were helming Stars and Stripes at the different boats in both campaigns, 2000, 2003 America's Cup.
Mm-hmm.
For Dennis Conner. How did the relationship with Dennis Conner come about?
Well, there's 2 stories. Some people might have heard one or both, but I got a phone call one day at the loft. The person in the front office, all of a sudden a buzzer rings, and it's Dennis Conner's on line 2. And I had as many sarcastic friends as the rest of us, right? And so I'm like, all right. And I just assumed that it was my dear friend, Brad Dimio. So I pick up the phone. All right, Dim, you prick, what do you want? And that's what we called him. And it's like, hi, Ken, this is Dennis Connor. I'm like, yeah, whatever, Dem. So are we going to meet for a beer after work? Or are we not? What's going on? And there's a long pause. It's like, Ken, this is Dennis Connor. I'm like, you gotta be flipping kidding me. He said, I'm in town. I'm in Newport. I want to take you to lunch. I'm like, okay, great. And I'm still not sure if it's Dennis that's going to show. Sure enough, about half an hour later, he walks up the stairs and I walk out of my office and we go to lunch. And he sprung it on me that Chris Dixon was skippering his boat, in the what was the Whitbread at the time. I believe it was the Whitbread, or I don't think it was the Volvo yet.
He's
It
a New
was
Zealander, right?
Toshiba, yeah, Toshiba, and I think it was the Toshiba campaign. It might have been their next one. Anyway, he said, "Chris is my guy. He's going to drive the boat. I'd like you to be the tactician because I see that you're doing really good things in this class and this class." And he said, "I hear you're the guy." And I'm like, all right, well, let me think about it. I remember going home and my wife and I started talking about it. It was going to mean moving to New Zealand and, everything that came. We didn't have kids at the time, or our daughter at the time. About a week and a half later, something happened between him and Dixon. Dixon was all of a sudden poof out of the picture. And I remember all of a sudden the phone rang again. And this time I didn't think it was a crank call. It was him. And he said, well, you're now the driver. Does that change? Does that make it easy? I said, yes, it makes it easy. Done. I'm in. And we started there. And that was it. It was unbelievable. Oh, and then, but we didn't have a boat. He didn't even have the money yet. He wasn't even sure if he was going to be able to pull it off. So that summer, I started sailing Etchells and we won the North Americans, I think, the year before. And we were gearing up for the North Americans that summer. And we sailed a regatta against each other up in Marblehead. And he called up. He said, hey, I want to buy a set of your, and at that time it was Sopstad sails. I want to buy a set of your sails because you're winning with these things. And he buys everybody's sails. He's got 1,000 sets of sails. So we went up. We spent a day kind of training up in Marblehead. And then had the first day. And I think I don't know, Judd Smith. I forget who was winning after the first day. And we came in, we had a beer that night, and I walked over to him, and he goes, "Come here." And we used to call it getting cornered, not cornered, but cornered. And he would kind of turn you into a corner and pin you in there, and he would talk at you. And by the way, here's a legend talking at you, so talk at me. And he said, "I think you are the best sailor in the world." I said, "Jesus, where did that come from?" He goes, because your sails are so bad that if you can actually win with them, you must be the best sailor in the world. It's like, wow, I don't know how to take this, but okay, I guess with that. And then we just kept going from there. We just kept going from there. It was quite to call my Dennis Connor experience a roller coaster, I think is doing a disservice to a good roller coaster ride. It was pretty crazy.
So in America's Cup 2000, the boat you were driving, USA 55, was reportedly not as fast as Prada nor America One, and in both those boats, along with Team New Zealand, probably were thought to have superior design, better funded, deeper talent pools, and so on. Yet you still reached the semi-finals, the Louis Vuitton. And so did it feel to you that you had to massively outperform the other competitors in sort of sheer sailing ability and tactical calls to overcome the boat speed issues? Was that apparent to you?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And fortunately, it plays back to a few answers ago. But at the beginning, the first round and a half, we absolutely sailed how you just described the ladder. Like we have to sail with our hair on fire, and we gotta be perfect, and we gotta do everything right because we're not as fast. And then we decided, well, why don't we get faster? Okay, let's just quit pissing about it and let's get faster. Let's figure this out. And we tried all kinds of interesting things, and we worked on balance, and we worked on sail shape, and it was mostly in-house that we were doing it. It wasn't like we were buying new sails. And then the second part of it is let's just sail better than people. And we realized about halfway through the second round that we had a really maneuverable boat, like a super maneuverable boat. And Peter Peter Holmberg, we had a great after guard. Peter Holmberg and Peter Eisler, and then Tom Whedon joined us. And I remember it was one start against the French. And by the way, this is something about sailors that we can remember everything. And after the dial up, we peeled down and tried to hook them right away. And Holmberg said, I remember him saying out loud, you're starting to figure this shit out, because he was a really good match racer. And we used to go match race etchels against each other all the time to practice. And all of a sudden it's like, our boat, we can turn this thing. We can get ourselves in position to start. And then we realized in a breeze, we were actually quite good. We were one of the better boats in a breeze. And so the combination of being confident in a breeze, it got to be breezier as that kind of summer, that Kiwi summer went on. And the fact that we didn't mind being aggressive with that boat in the pre-start. Those three factors, all of a sudden it's like, hey, we can win today. No matter who we were racing against, we can win today. And once you start getting that feeling, that confidence, that you got a couple rabbits to pull out of the hat like that, no excuse. Off you go. Let's go.
I suppose in match racing, if you have that maneuverability and you get the good start, right, then from then on, you hopefully can start dictating the race to even somebody with greater boat speed.
I remember when I was commentating, we would do all kinds of kind of analysis, and it was like 80-something% of races were won on the first cross. So it's a really high number. And
still
so
happening today, isn't it, in the America's Cup today?
It always will. But in my day, the first cross could happen 10 minutes into the race. It could be a drag race to the left corner. It's a little different now that the first cross happens about 30 seconds after the start. But still, it's the old adage of get ahead and get your elbows out. It was the same. Nothing was different then. Get a better start. Hopefully you can leg it out to the first cross. And not that it was easy after that, but you certainly made life a little more bearable for yourself.
So I'm interested in the fact that Dennis Connor's on the boat at this point, right? I mean, he
never was on the boat.
Oh, I didn't know that. So he was on shore. Otherwise, I was thinking that, did you ever feel that he was going to try and grab the wheel from you at some point?
No, in the second campaign, he grabbed the wheel one day, and because he thought I wasn't sailing very well. So that morning he called me up and said, I'm going to sail today. No, he was going to be the hero against the boat that had never won a single race yet in the entire series. And then he came in, he kind of looked at me, he said, that's how you do it. So yes, we won the race that day, but that was the only day he was ever on the boat during my two campaigns.
That was an extraordinary campaign that New Zealand on NZL 60 just blew everybody else away. I mean, that was a moment for the New Zealand nation, a little bit like Australia in 83, right? That captured the nation. And it doesn't seem that the America's Cup has since, in the United States, captured the imagination that it did back in 83 and probably 87, which is sort of interesting. But I want to move to 2003, which is when Alinghi won. So at the time, did the 2003 campaign feel like the watershed moment in America's Cup history that we now recognize it to be? And I'm thinking about not just Alinghi being the first European team to win, but that injection of sort of billionaire money and corporate funding, technology, and somewhat the end to national teams, right, where people sort of defected to other teams. Did it palpably feel to you like the old model was being overtaken by billionaire-funded efforts? Just curious about that, whether you realized that at the time.
Well, listen, the America's Cup has always been won by time and money, right? Time and money usually buys you, if you do it right, time and money buys you the right people, and the right people put everything in place. So I don't think the billionaire quotient was any different. A big difference was, so in 2000, I believe there were 4 or 5 American teams. Because I remember we all, President Clinton came to New Zealand for some big thing. And he and Chelsea, were in New Zealand. We all had all 5 teams lined up, and we all met them. And I think Don Riley's program, America True, brought one of their boats over, and the skippers of each of the programs were given a section of the boat, and President Clinton came down and introduced himself, and each of us were given a section of the boat to explain to him what the section was. And I was in the coffee. I was to explain to him what the coffee grinders did. What the grinders did. So I had him spinning the wheels on the other side of me. On the other side, I'm like, oh Jesus, don't hit this guy in the jaw and knock him out. So I'm gonna have Secret Service shoving guns up my what. So anyway, and by the way, a little side to that is I'll never forget. He met everybody, and then he went up and he met each of the teams, because each of the teams were sitting together. But it wasn't just teams; it was teams and families. So literally hundreds of people that he met. And Stars and Stripes was the last of the 5 teams. And by the time he got down to me, to our team, I was standing kind of off to the side. Hello, hi everybody, how you doing? Stars and Stripes, Dennis, nice to meet you, everything else. And he walks by, he comes over to me, he goes, so Ken, do you play golf? So after meeting hundreds of people, he remembered your name. I'm still kind of blown away to this day. So thing with Stars and Stripes in 2000 and 2003 is we were 100% American team. And that was really important to Dennis. In fact, a guy named Morgan Truvich might have been, all due respect to Mike Topa and Billy Trenkle, but he might have been as good or a trimmer as we had in the whole program. And he's a Kiwi. He didn't sail. We were all American all the time. So that part went away after Dennis. That part clearly went away. So this multinational, they're trying to get back to it now, but let's face it, it's still pretty multinational.
Yeah,
People get around this passport rule.
Don't they? Some teams tend to have.
But 2003, 2007, I think 2007 would be considered kind of the big, that rivaled 87. 87, I don't know how many teams were in 87. It's almost the same. I think there were 11 teams maybe in 2007 in Valencia. And in so many ways, and so many people have this opinion, when Alinghi kind of screwed up the deed of gift after that 2007 campaign, they took it maybe a little more nonchalantly. I'm probably going to get in trouble with Brad Budworth for saying this, but the fact that went to court killed those days of America's Cup. So they had a 90-footer class. In fact, I was sailing with George David on the 90-footer Rambler at the time. We were doing a lot of offshore stuff, and it was a water ballasted 90-footer, and they actually called like, hey, would George consider selling the boat? Because I think that was kind of a model boat that they were looking at for the future of what the Cup was going to be. So much more high performance, something like that. It was kind of before the days of canting keels. Canting keels were just starting to come into it, but it was going to stay in monohulls. And I think it had a real potential of continuing to grow and expand. But that court battle and what ensued, it'll never be the same. It went from a sport with foul weather gear to a sport with wetsuits. And by the way,
and helmets,
there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's a wetsuit sport, and it's going to be in the air, and that genie has left the bottle, and it ain't going back.
Yeah,
this is going to be the highest of high performance from now on. But part of me still wonders, in 2007 to the deed of gift, if that had gone to 90-foot monohulls, what would the America's Cup look like today compared to what it does look like today? It always kind of intrigues me. Of course, we'll never know.
I was in Valencia a couple of years ago in the summer. My son had a program there. I passed a very forlorn looking America's Cup hull on the side of the marina, and it was covered in graffiti. And I thought, that's got to be an America's Cup. And it was, but it was uncared for. It was quite sad. So, Ken, let's pretend for a moment that I've got incredibly, ridiculously lucky, and you've said to me, I'll be in Annapolis this weekend. If you want somebody to jump on your boat for the spring regatta, I'm there. So, say that happened. Take me through what you'd be asking me about. This would say a J1, doesn't really matter what type of boat, J boat. What would you ask me about? What would you be sort of prioritizing at the dock, first of all?
That day's weather and rig setup. So, the boat you described is a boat with very limited sail choices, right? You got a jib, a main, and a kite, as limited as it gets. And therefore, people think that one design classes, for example, with really limited sail choices like that are simple. Well, they're actually the most complex boats in the world to sail because you have to take a jib, for example, from 0 to 30 knots, right? Which is near impossible. So essentially, you have a jib that you have to try to fool into performing in each of those conditions. And that has to do with obviously tensions around the three-corner triangle, how tight, but head stay, sag, head stay, tension, position, lead position, sheet twist. So you can't sail a boat like a J105 without understanding all of that perfectly. And are your lowers loose enough? Is the side sag and the mast enough for that given day? Really, are you loose enough in light air? Are you tight enough in a breeze? Can we get enough? Can we get more backstay on than my buddy next door to me at the top end of the range without turning the mainsail inside out? What is turning your mainsail inside out? How close to the edge should you be to turning the mainsail inside out at the top end in order to get head stay tension? So a boat like yours, it's about that sort of weather / rig preparation because again, it sounds simple, Melgus 24s, J70s, J105s. It sounds simple that there's only a three sail inventory to get you through the whole thing. It is the most complex way to ever sail because you have to be so good at everything else in order to fool those sails into being what they probably aren't for that given day.
One thing I've learned last year actually was that you have the tuning guide, whether you're North Sails or Quantum, and I found that we sailed faster, a couple of turns tighter in every condition than the tuning guide. And would say to me, because I'd say, oh, the boat seemed to go better with the rig tighter. And his point was, it's not really the boat, it's your driving style that suits that, just which I didn't really understand. But
and it might be up here too. You had a really good leg, and you didn't quite get it as loose as you wanted that day. Listen, the day that we learned that you could essentially spin all the shrouds off of a J24 in super light air, my brother forgot to put the pins. He was doing the bow, and we started a race, and we had loosened the rig up, and by the end of the race, we didn't even notice it at the time, but the shrouds are flapping in the breeze. And we won that. We had never been fast in light air. We won that race by a leg. I mean, wow. It was not even close.
So interesting.
And we're like, what the hell just happened? Hey, there's like one turn. There was like one turn left on one of the shrouds. So it was right on the verge of falling over the side because he forgot to put the damn pins in. And so I'd rather be lucky than good every once in a while too. But then it got in my head that if we weren't that loose in light air, if we were that loose in light air, we were going to be a rocket ship. Same thing for you. You had a leg where, hey, we were actually tighter than the tuning guide. If it works up there, then it works. Because perfection is the enemy of good enough, right? And yeah. I'm a firm believer in that phrase. And if you're happy in your brain, then it works.
So we're out the race course. It's the Spring One design. You're with us. I'm driving. You're helping me. What would we be talking about as we approach the start of like a typical windward leeward race? It's the last minute. It's the last 30 seconds. What would you be talking to me about?
Well, prior to that, we'd talk to you about where are you comfortable starting. Some people love to win the boat end. Some people, they just start at the pin almost no matter what. Is there a spot on the line that you, as the driver, are comfortable with? Because if I try to talk you into a position that I might be happy with, and that you're not quite happy with, it's not going to work.
It'll
So
be
that's the
quite
first thing.
different for you and me.
Yeah. We're going to first talk about that. Where are
Mm.
you comfortable? And then let's say you're comfortable at the weather end. Okay. Do you mind starting below the pack at the weather end? Okay. Because I'd like to get down the line a little bit, because the first shift we think is coming from the left, or the current's better on the left side, or for some odd reason. And so we have that conversation, and to finally we can both visualize, here comes the pack, they're at the boat, we're going to come in, we're going to do a last second lee bow, kind of a port end approach start, and let's try to play it in your mind several times over again, so nothing is a surprise. Now there's going to be inevitably a couple surprises. Somebody's going to try to take that hole, somebody's going to be behind you, somebody's going to, so there'll always be some last minute back and forth. But as long as we're both on the same page as the general theory of what we're trying to do, and why we're trying to do it, then we got a pretty good chance of success.
Yeah, I think that visualization thing is really important to me, probably for other drivers as well. I need to know the plan is to head up there and take that tack at 45 seconds to lee bow. Hopefully somebody, I need to be able to visualize that and know where it is. And of course, it's always quite difficult because it's not like the surface of a playing field where you can actually see the penalty area if it's soccer. When you're starting a sailboat race, it's water with no discernible features whatsoever. There's no physical line. So I had to go and practice that a couple of times to sort of figure out this is the 100 square meters of water that we need to be in that point.
Nothing wrong with that. But by the way, I think we're in for a bit of there's evolution and there's revolution, and we're in a revolutionary time. This, like Vacaros and Velocitech and companies like that.
Yeah.
That's changing starting. I think we're going to see, as people start to understand how to use that more, and I'm sure some people have already thought this through far more than me, but starting styles might change because of that technology. It's really interesting. And some of the classes I know who are addicted to it will never turn back. They are totally committed to it, and off they go. It's really that's changing the sport. That for sure, that's going to change the sport.
In the J105 Fleet 3 in Annapolis, we're about to do a test of the Vacaros system. Mm-hmm. And it sort of occurred to me that does that then democratize, if you like, the start? So it's going to be really interesting to see if it does compress performance a little bit amongst the fleet, and which is, I think, is a good thing.
Well, I think so. I think it's going to change sailing styles, because now, instead of a positioning thing, it might be an acceleration thing. That all of a sudden the people who can accelerate better are going to, because everybody's going to be boom, 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 level up. Nobody's over the line early, but everybody's much closer to the line. You don't have that midline sag. Kind of takes the pressure off the bow person to say, one boat length, half a boat length, stuff like that. Technically, you don't have a person on the bow anymore, and you just read the box, and it's and who accelerates quicker, who can get off the line quicker. So it's definitely going to change things.
Yeah, I get that. You sort of move on to what's the next competitive part of that race that that people can differentiate themselves on. Okay, so Ken, in your current role, is there anything you'd like to see change about sailing or racing, or in fact the community of sailors?
Thank you for teeing that up. I'm not sure if this is planned or not, but so as I've said many times to whoever wants to listen to me, I got so sick of windward lures and kind of the standard regatta that I sailed around the world 2.5 times. I think the sport needs a jolt. These regattas need to be more fun. They're expensive, they're time consuming. There's barriers of entry. How can we break down all these barriers and just simply make regattas more fun? So I got sick of complaining about it, and God bless Commodore J. Cross of the New York Yacht Club, of which I'm a proud member. Went to him last summer and started to talk about, I wanted to kind of put a little committee together on how we can maybe improve the regatta experience. And to step back, the person who I'm sailing 100-footers with, this boat called V, we're racing in Antigua next week. He came into this as literally a brand new sailor. I had a Sunfish as my first boat. His first race boat is a 100-foot maxi. And so, so a little different perspective. So let's start
I
there.
can't imagine.
By the way, I told him that story. I'm like, my first boat was a sunfish, and he's like, "What the hell's a sunfish?" So anyway, that's kind of where we were at. But he started to talk about, is that it? Is that what we get for this regatta? I get to walk down the dock, hang out with the boys and girls during the day, and then get off and leave. Oh, there's a social, maybe there's a beer tent or another boring owner's dinner or something like that. And he's like, is this it? So it really got me thinking, is this it? I think these regattas are super stale. So Commodore Cross said, all right, you don't want to complain about it. You want to do something about it? Here you go. Do something about it. So we put together a little, what we call task force at the New York Yacht Club. And we set out a three-pronged attack on the regatta. And we're going to use the New York Yacht Club annual regatta, which is the oldest running regatta, I think, in North America, this summer in June as a test platform. And we're going to change a lot of stuff. And the first thing is expectations. We're going to manage expectations. The pros, the sailors, we're racing. We're not wasting time anymore. In fact, I don't even want to put a postponement flag on the race committee boats. We're going to pre-schedule the night before. You're going to know where your racing circle is and what time you're racing the next day. And it might be 1 or 2 in the afternoon, by the way. And if so, hang out with your family during the morning. Imagine that if you got to actually hang out with your family. Go play 18 holes of golf, whatever you want to do. But we're too far. We're way beyond not having the ability to schedule, let's call it with a 90% percentile chance of being right or wrong, when racing should actually happen in the course of a day. The amount of time we have all had sitting on a boat waiting for wind is off the charts, staggering. And we can stop it. We can literally stop it tomorrow. So first of all, managing expectations. We're going to reach out to the pros and we're going to reach out to the owners and the crews before this regatta and tell them, here's what to expect. If there's a 20-degree wind shift in the last minute before the race start, we're not postponing. Start the freaking race. If it's almost a reach to the first weather mark, well, guess what? Best sailors are still going to figure out how to probably get there first. Or God forbid, if somebody else want to race, gee, that would be a real shame. And by the way, we're going to shift mark number 2, and it's going to turn into a windward leeward again. We're going to figure out how to keep the race circles closer by, so we're not traveling by engine an hour and a half out to the race circle. How about if you started a race and raced out to the race circle? How about if you started a race and raced in from your race circle? We've got a 27-page PowerPoint presentation that we presented to the trustees and to the sailing committee, and we're getting real traction that we're going. And by the way, we're also going to have. I'm tired of the excuse we lose like 28 to 40-year-olds because, there's so much competition for young people's times and families and soccer and everything else. God forbid we invited the family to the event. Well, I mean, what if the nicest facility, maybe in North America, Harbor Court, said, hey, families, come on in because we're going to have little kid races and we're going to do this. And husbands who are with your kid, or we're going to have a junior regatta along the same time as the senior regatta. There's no reason we can't make these regattas more fun again because they're too expensive, too time consuming, and people aren't getting enough bang for their buck. So thank goodness for the New York Yacht Club. They have, I think we're pretty close to being able to officially get the wheels turning. We're going to reach out to all the pros in the area and say, it's not going to be a perfect beat. It's probably not going to be a perfect starting line. But we're going to start on time every single day. If it's blowing 5 knots and the boat is moving and it's big wind shifts, guess what? That's called sailboat racing.
Yeah.
Let's go. I think we got the opportunity to try to do something special. And if it works here, there's no reason. And by the way, none of these things are earth-shattering. And very often, a lot of the things we're talking about have been used in bits and pieces around the world. I don't know if anybody's put it all into one package and had kind of a big change like this, or at least attempting to do something like this. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, and a bunch of really good people helped out. a bunch of talented people, a bunch of great sailors, a bunch of people who run regattas. It's been fun, and I'm kind of proud of the work we've done. And I hope we can do something to help change regattas going forward.
It sounds fantastic. And did you say you've got a pilot regatta planned?
Yeah, so one of the big things we decided to do was not try to do an overly ambitious, like, okay, all the regattas at the New York. I think they do 14 big events a year. They could do team racing, they do ORC racing, one design, PHRF, all kinds of different classics, all kinds of different stuff. Let's not try to fit everything into this new box.
Yeah.
This one kind of multi-circle regatta kind of ticks a lot of what we're trying to do here. So the annual regatta, I think it's the second weekend of June, will be, the first good shot at it. And the other thing, by the way, there's one more thing. Race PROs and race organizers are terrified to make mistakes these days because they're getting inundated with, hey, I'm in the wrong class. Hey, my rating sucks. Hey, we should have started earlier. We should have started later. I'm telling them owners aren't allowed to call anymore. You're not allowed to rally for whatever class. Use common sense for classes. Displacement boats, go with displacement boats. Semi-planing boats, go with semi-displacement with semi-displacement, and planing boats with planing boats. That's it. That's the way it's going to be. There's no arguing. Not a single boat owner was on our task force because, God bless them, and I've been in this position a million times before, they can't help but do what's best for their boat, their program, and their crew. So guess what? You're taken out of the equation. We're going to create something so fun, you're going to want to come versus having to lobby for whatever may be in the best interest of you. So this has been fun. We did a talk. Ray Wolf, your friend Ray Wolf has been kind of my counterpart in crime in this whole thing and putting this group together, and he's been a huge help. And we spoke to the sailing committee last night at the New York Yacht Club. We spoke to the trustees in the executive board a couple of weeks ago down in New York, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna consider doing this whole package, which I'm very happy about, and hopefully, and the goal is then to trickle it through the world. Let's make it fun for owners to show up again, because like I said, it's not cheap, it's time consuming. Let's open up the rules again to get more kids on board. I raced with my father every single weekend when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Every weekend. There's no way he was leaving the house without me. So why aren't we doing that more? Let's loosen up the rules. Let's get more kids on board. There's a lot to be done, but I think, fortunately, I give Commodore Cross kudos here. He's a risk taker, and he doesn't mind kind of stirring things up, and I think this could stir it up in a positive way.
So Ken, thank you. This has been a brilliant, fascinating conversation. You were very generous with your time and your anecdotes. I really appreciate it, and thank you for spending the time with Sailfaster.
We got to do more of these things as a sport. We got to spread the word. We got to, keep this fun, keep it entertaining, get more people into it. There's no reason why that can't happen. So thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thank you.